The morning began quietly in the small town hospital, the kind of slow and calm morning when people moved with a soft patience, and the halls echoed only with the distant sounds of machines and gentle conversation. Outside, the sun had barely lifted itself above the rooftops, and the air carried the cool, sleepy feeling of a new day. Inside the reception area, a few patients waited for their turn, flipping through old magazines or scrolling on their phones, unaware that something unusual was about to interrupt the normal routine. The sliding doors at the entrance opened with their usual soft whir, but what entered through them caught everyone's attention almost instantly. A young girl, no more than 12 years old, stepped in with careful steps, as if every movement she made had to be perfect. In her arms, pressed close against her chest, she held a tiny baby wrapped in a light blanket. The contrast was striking. Young girl with dark skin, small in size, looking far too young to be carrying a baby, and the child in her arms, with pale skin and soft blonde hair, looked as if he belonged to someone else entirely. For a moment, people simply stared, not out of judgment, but out of confusion. It wasn't something they saw every day. A child carrying a child. A girl walking into a hospital alone, with no adult following behind her. She walked with purpose, almost as if she had rehearsed this moment in her mind, but her eyes gave away everything. They were filled with fear, worry, and something even deeper, responsibility. A kind of responsibility far too heavy for her age. A nurse at the reception desk was the first to react. She stood up slowly, not wanting to alarm the girl, and walked toward her with a gentle smile. The girl tightened her hold on the baby the moment the nurse approached, as if afraid someone might try to take him away. "Hi, sweetheart," the nurse said softly. "Are you here for the baby?" The girl nodded quickly, her lips pressed together. She did not speak at first. She just watched the nurse's hands, making sure they didn't come too close. "Is the baby hurt?" the nurse asked in the same calm tone. Another small shake of the girl's head. I just need someone to check him," she finally whispered, her voice barely audible. The nurse exchanged a quick look with another staff member behind the desk, a look filled with questions neither of them knew how to ask yet. But none of them pushed the girl. She looked too frightened for sudden questions. "All right," the nurse said gently. "We can help you. Come with me, okay?" The girl followed her slowly. Her steps were careful, almost cautious, as if each one was a test of trust. She held the baby as though he were the most precious thing in her life, her arms wrapped protectively around him, while her small fingers tried to keep the blanket from slipping. People in the waiting room watched as she walked past them. Some had sympathetic eyes. Others looked worried. A few seemed confused, but no one said anything. Something about the scene told them that this wasn't the moment to ask questions. It was a moment to let the professionals handle it. The nurse led the girl into a small pediatric room, one usually used for quick checkups or simple tests. Inside, the lights were soft, and the air smelled faintly of disinfectant mixed with cotton and lotion. The girl didn't sit down. Instead, she stood in the middle of the room, slowly rocking the baby in her arms, her breaths uneven. The nurse tried again. "What's your name, sweetheart?" The girl hesitated. It wasn't that. She didn't know her name. It was something else. Something in her eyes showed that she didn't trust the moment yet. She didn't feel safe enough to speak freely. "It's okay," the nurse said quickly, sensing her fear. "You don't have to tell me anything if you don't want to. I just want to make sure the baby is okay. Can I take a look at him? I won't take him from you. I promise." That last sentence seemed to ease the tension a little. The girl looked down at the baby, then slowly loosened her hold, just enough for the nurse to see his face. His eyes were half open, sleepy, and His cheeks were slightly pale, but he wasn't crying. He just lay there quietly, pressing his tiny fist against the blanket. "Is he breathing okay?" the nurse asked softly. The girl nodded. "Yes, but he looked cold, and he was alone." Those last words made the nurse pause. Alone. A baby. Alone. The meaning behind that single word felt heavy. The nurse glanced behind her and quietly signaled for another staff member to bring in a doctor. Not in a panicked way, but with the kind of calm urgency that healthcare workers use when something unexpected appears. While waiting, the nurse continued speaking gently. "Did someone send you here with the baby?" The girl's eyes dropped to the floor. She shook her head slowly. "Are your parents here with you?" The nurse tried another shake. "Does the baby's family know you're here?" The girl's grip tightened again. She didn't answer this time. Before the nurse could try another question, a doctor stepped inside, an older man with a calm expression and a soft voice. He introduced himself in a friendly tone and asked if he could listen to the baby's breathing. The girl hesitated for a moment, then nodded. She didn't hand the baby to him. She simply shifted her arms so he could place the small stethoscope on the child's chest. The doctor listened for a few moments, nodding quietly to himself. "His heartbeat is steady," he said. "He seems a little tired, maybe a bit dehydrated, but he's safe for now. We'll make sure he gets exactly what he needs." The girl let out a shaky breath, one she had probably been holding the entire time. "You did the right thing bringing him here," the doctor added gently, her eyes lifted at those words. For the first time since she walked through the doors, there was a flicker of relief in her expression. But the fear hadn't left. There was still something she was hiding, something she was scared to say. The nurse asked softly, "Can you tell us where you found him?" The girl shook her head quickly, almost fearfully this time. "Not yet. Please, just help him first." Her voice cracked. She wasn't being difficult. She was scared, deeply scared. The adults in the room understood that now. "All right," the doctor said calmly. "We won't push you." He stepped away to gather supplies, while the nurse guided the girl to a chair. This time she sat down, though she kept the baby firmly in her lap. Her legs were shaking. Maybe from fear, maybe from exhaustion. Maybe from carrying the weight of something no child her age should ever have to deal with. As the baby rested against her, she stroked the side of his face slowly, like someone who had spent the past few hours doing everything she could to keep him calm. The nurse noticed the way the girl kept glancing toward the door, as if expecting someone to come bursting in, as if she were afraid time was running out. "You're safe here," the nurse said gently. "Nothing bad is going to happen to you." The girl didn't look convinced, but she didn't argue either. Minutes passed in silence. The doctor returned with warm blankets, small bottles, and some basic medical tools. The nurse helped guide the girl to untuck the baby from her arms just enough so they could wrap him properly. He made a soft sound, a tiny whimper, but then settled into the warmth without a struggle. The girl watched every movement carefully, her eyes tracking every hand that came near him. "Is he your brother?" the nurse asked softly. The girl looked away. "No. Are you taking care of him for someone?" Her voice dropped to almost nothing. "I don't know." It was clear she wasn't lying. She truly didn't know where she stood in the situation. She only knew that the baby needed help, and she was the one who had stepped up. The doctor checked the baby's temperature and hydration levels, while the girl watched anxiously, ready to react at the slightest sign of distress. "He's going to be fine," the doctor said after a few minutes. "He just needs some care." The girl nodded slowly, but she didn't relax. Her shoulders were still tense, her arms hovering protectively around the baby, even when he was safely wrapped. A social worker soon entered the room. offering a warm smile and taking a seat a few steps away. She didn't speak right away, giving the girl time to breathe. The girl kept rocking the baby, her eyes drifting between him and the adults, unsure who to trust. "Sweetheart," the social worker finally said in a gentle tone, "we're here to help both of you. No one is angry. No one is blaming you. We just want to understand how you ended up here with the baby." The girl bit her lip and looked down at the child in her lap. "I promised," she whispered. The adults exchanged another glance. "A promise. To whom? Why?" But they didn't ask yet. The girl was still trembling. She needed time. The social worker softened her voice even more. "Can you tell me one thing? Just one. Are you in any danger right now?" The girl froze. Her fingers gripped the blanket tighter. After a long pause, she shook her head. But the fear in her eyes told a different story, a story she wasn't ready to reveal. "All right," the social worker said gently. "We won't make you talk until you're ready. You did a brave thing today." The girl blinked rapidly, trying to keep her tears from escaping. For the first time, she let out the truth she had been carrying silently since she walked in. "Please, just don't take him away," she whispered. "Promised I'd keep him safe." The room stayed quiet for a long moment after the girl whispered those words, as if everyone understood the weight behind them. The baby rested peacefully in her arms now, wrapped in a warm blanket, his tiny chest rising and falling in soft rhythms. But the girl's breathing was uneven, shaky, almost as if she was still waiting for something bad to happen. She kept her head bowed, her chin nearly touching the top of the baby's blanket, as though her very presence was the only shield he had. The social worker stayed seated a few feet away, not wanting to crowd her. She noticed how tightly the girl held the baby, her fingers curled protectively, as though she had been carrying him for hours. There was a softness in her eyes, a kind of tiredness that didn't belong to a child. Something inside her had been forced to grow up too quickly. "You're not in trouble," the social worker said gently. "We just want to understand how you came here. You did something very brave." The girl nodded, but she didn't look up. The words seemed to float past her, not quite reaching the deeper place where her fear still lived. Her focus remained on the baby, and every so often she adjusted his blanket or touched his cheek to make sure he was still warm. The doctor stepped out briefly to gather supplies needed for the baby's hydration. The nurse stayed, leaning against the counter, keeping her voice low and calm. "Can we get you something to drink?" she asked. "You look tired." The girl hesitated, then shook her head. "Not now. Have you eaten this morning?" Another small shake, barely noticeable. The nurse exchanged a look with the social worker, who slowly stood up and walked toward the small sink in the corner. She filled a cup with water, then placed it on the table closest to the girl. "You don't have to drink it right away," the social worker said softly. "It's just there if you need it." The girl gave a tiny nod, almost grateful, but still guarded. A few moments later, the doctor returned with a small hydration kit for the baby and a soft cloth warmed by the heater. The girl carefully shifted the baby so the doctor could check him again. Even though she didn't hand him over, she moved with trust, slow, cautious trust. "He's responding well," the doctor said in a low voice. "His breathing is steady. He just needs fluids." When the doctor finished, he stepped back, giving space again. The girl relaxed slightly, but the worry in her face didn't fade. The social worker sat down again. "Sweetheart," she said, in a voice that barely rose above a whisper, "can you tell me how long you've had him?" The girl looked down at the baby and smoothed the blanket around him. Her lips trembled before she spoke. "Since this morning," she said quietly. "But I've seen him before." That caught everyone's attention. "You've seen him before?" the nurse asked gently. The girl nodded slowly. 3 days. The room didn't change, but the air in it felt different, heavier, sharper. The adults exchanged looks, but none of them spoke. They waited for her to continue. The girl bit her lip, thinking carefully. I saw him with a woman. She always looked tired. She was carrying him, walking around near the old bus shelter. I thought maybe she was waiting for someone, but she didn't talk to anyone. The nurse asked softly, Did she speak to you? The girl shook her head. Not at first. She looked scared, like she was always looking for something, or someone was following her. I didn't know. She paused, her breath catching a little. Yesterday, she was sitting on the bench. The baby was crying, and she was shaking like she hadn't slept. Did anyone else see her? The social worker asked gently. I don't know, the girl whispered. People walked past. Some looked at her, but no one stopped. She looked down at the baby again, and her voice softened. He'd cried for a long time. The nurse wanted to reach out and comfort her, but she didn't. She understood that this girl didn't respond well to sudden gestures. So she stayed still and listened. What happened this morning? The social worker finally asked. The girl's throat bobbed as she swallowed hard. It was clear she remembered every moment. I went out early, she said, barely above a whisper. I wanted to buy bread from the corner store. When I passed the bus stop, I saw her again. She was standing there. She had the baby, but she was crying. Really crying. The girl's hands trembled slightly as she spoke, but she didn't stop. I walked closer because I didn't know what to do. I asked her if she was okay. The nurse leaned forward, gently encouraging her. And what did she say? The girl wiped her cheek quickly with her shoulder, pretending it was an itch. She said she couldn't do it anymore. She said she didn't want anything bad to happen to him. The baby's tiny fingers curled around the edge of the blanket, as if reacting to her words. She put him down on the bench. The girl continued. Softly. She wrapped him in the blanket and kissed his forehead. Then she stepped back and said, You're kind. Someone kind will help him. The room fell completely silent. The girl squeezed her eyes shut as if trying to hide the memory. She looked at me, just for a second. Then she walked away. Really fast. I called out to her, but she didn't look back. The nurse's voice was soft. Did you try to follow her? The girl nodded. I ran a little, but I couldn't. Carry the baby and run at the same time. And he was crying. I didn't want to drop him. She opened her eyes again. Full of tears, she refused to let fall. I didn't know what to do. I waited to see if she would come back. I waited a long time. How long? The social worker asked gently. I don't know, the girl whispered. Maybe an hour. Maybe more, but she never came back. The social worker felt her heart tighten. And then you decided to bring him here? The girl nodded. I didn't want him to get sick. He felt cold, and he didn't have anyone. The nurse asked, Why didn't you call anyone? Or go home? First, the girl's expression changed at that question. It wasn't anger. It was fear, raw, honest fear. I was scared, she said. I didn't know if anyone would believe me. And I didn't want anyone to take him away before I knew he was safe. The social worker nodded slowly, understanding. Everything the girl didn't say aloud. She didn't trust the adults around her. Maybe she had reasons for that. Reasons still hidden. Sweetheart, the social worker said gently, the baby is safe now. And you did something incredible. You protected him when he needed someone. The girl shook her head faintly. I don't know. I just didn't want him to be alone. The doctor stepped closer, his voice warm and calm. What you did was brave. Many adults might have walked away, but you didn't. The girl looked at him with tired eyes. Promised her. She looked at me like she needed help, like she didn't want to leave him, but she didn't have a choice. The nurse asked quietly, "Did she say anything else to you?" The girl hesitated, then nodded slowly. She sighed, "Please, keep him safe until someone can help." She swallowed again. So I did. The adults exchanged a look filled with sadness, understanding, and urgency. They knew the baby's mother needed help too immediately. The doctor cleared his throat softly. "We're going to make sure he gets everything he needs. And we'll look for his mother so she can get help too." The girl looked away, a flicker of worry crossing her face. Don't get her in trouble," she whispered. She wasn't trying to hurt him. "No one is thinking that," the nurse said quickly. "We only want to help her." The girl let out a shaky breath, as if she wasn't completely convinced, but wanted to be. The social worker leaned forward just a little. "Can you tell us one more thing? Where exactly was the bus stop where you found her?" The girl looked unsure for a moment, then finally spoke. She gave the name of the nearest street and the description of the bus shelter, the old one with peeling paint and a bench with a broken corner. "Thank you," the social worker said gently. "That helps us a lot." The girl hugged the baby. Closer, her voice small. "You won't leave him alone, right?" The nurse smiled softly. "Never. He will be watched every moment." The girl nodded, relief settling into her shoulders. Her grip relaxed just a little. The social worker stood slowly. "We're going to step outside for a moment and talk, okay? We won't go far." The girl tensed. "Don't leave him." "We aren't," the nurse promised. "I'll stay right here with both of you." The girl looked at her for a long second, and finally nodded when the doctor and social worker stepped outside. They spoke in low voices, discussing the situation, the urgency of finding the mother, and the need to ensure the girl's own safety. They didn't know yet what her home life looked like. They didn't know why she was so scared of adults. But they knew she needed care too. Inside the room, the nurse pulled a small chair closer to the girl, sitting beside her. "Do you want a blanket?" she asked softly. The girl shook her head, her eyes fixed on the baby. "You're doing great," the nurse said in a gentle voice. The girl didn't answer, but her shoulders relaxed a little. A moment passed, and the girl whispered, barely audible, Do you think she'll come back for him?" The nurse looked at the child in her arms, then at the girl who had carried him so far. "We're going to do everything we can to make sure he ends up somewhere safe," she said softly. "And if his mother wants help, we'll help her too." The girl blinked slowly, her lashes wet. She didn't say anything more. She just held the baby close, hoping her promise hadn't been broken. And outside the room, the adults prepared to uncover the rest of the story one step at a time. The hallway outside the small hospital room grew quiet as the doctor and social worker walked away to make a few calls, leaving the girl inside with the nurse and the baby. The girl kept her eyes fixed on the child in her arms, humming softly, under her breath as if she believed that even a moment of silence might unsettle him. Her hands still trembled slightly, but the room felt safer now, warmer, as though the soft beeping of the monitors and the quiet footsteps outside the door created a shelter around her. The nurse sat nearby, giving the girl space, but staying close enough that she wouldn't feel alone. "You're doing really well," she said softly. "He looks calmer already." The girl nodded but didn't look up. She brushed her finger across the baby's cheek as he slept. The blanket wrapped around him rose and fell with each small breath. He looked peaceful, so peaceful that for a moment the girl allowed herself to breathe a little easier. "Are you tired?" the nurse asked gently. The girl shook her head, though the exhaustion in her face said otherwise. "I just want him to be okay," she whispered. "He will be," the nurse reassured her. "We're taking good care of him." The girl didn't answer. Her eyes stayed lowered, and she held the baby closer. The nurse noticed the way she protected him instinctively, carefully, like someone who had been responsible for him far longer than a few hours. After a few quiet moments, the social worker returned to the doorway and knocked softly. "Can I come in?" The girl lifted her eyes, then nodded. The social worker stepped inside with her usual calm smile. She carried a small notebook, though she didn't open it right away. She knelt down rather than sitting in a chair, keeping her voice low and steady. "Sweetheart," she began, "we went to check the bus stop you described. The one near the old corner store." The girl's shoulders stiffened. "Was she there?" The social worker shook her head gently. "No, but we did see signs that someone had been there recently. The blanket you mentioned matched what you described. And a few people in the area said they saw a woman early this morning." The girl lowered her gaze. "She didn't look well." "I know," the social worker said softly. "And we're going to try to find her so she can get help too." The girl shifted uneasily. "She wasn't bad," she murmured. "She didn't want to leave him." "We understand," the social worker said, her voice warm. "No one thinks she meant harm. Sometimes people get overwhelmed and don't know what to do. That's why we want to help her." The girl seemed relieved to hear that, though the fear in her eyes didn't disappear completely. The nurse stood up quietly and checked the baby again, touching his forehead gently. "His temperature is better," she said. "He's warming up nicely." A tiny smile appeared on the girl's lips, quick, faint, but real. "Can we talk for a little while?" a social worker asked softly. The girl hesitated. "About what?" "Nothing scary," the social worker said with a gentle laugh. "Just about you. We want to make sure you're okay too. You came here alone, carrying a baby, and that tells me you've been through a lot today." The girl swallowed, her fingers tightening around the baby's blanket. "I'm fine." The social worker tilted her head slightly. "It's all right if you're not. You're allowed to be tired, or worried, or scared." The girl stayed quiet. "Do you want to tell us where you live?" the social worker asked softly. The girl shook her head quickly. "Are you worried something might happen if we know?" A slow nod. The nurse and social worker exchanged a gentle glance. They had seen children with fear in their eyes before. It always came from a place deeper than what they showed on the surface. The social worker kept her voice soft. "You don't have to tell us everything. Just a little, so we know you're safe." The girl's eyes lowered again. She shifted the baby in her lap and finally whispered, "I live with my aunt." "That's good," the social worker said. "Is she kind to you?" The girl hesitated a moment too long. "She's okay." The social worker didn't push. Instead, she moved on gently. "Does she know you're here?" The girl shook her head. "I left early. She was sleeping." "Will she worry when she wakes up?" the social worker asked. Another long pause. "Maybe. I don't know." The nurse spoke softly. "We can call her for you if you want." The girl shook her head hard, almost panicked. "No, please don't. Not yet." "Why not?" the social worker asked. The girl bit her lip. She stared at the floor for a long moment before saying quietly, "She won't understand." The adults understood what she meant without needing more explanation. This wasn't a home where mistakes or surprises were welcomed. This was a home where the girl had learned to avoid trouble by staying silent. The social worker softened her voice even more. "We won't call her right now, okay? Not until you're ready." The girl relaxed a little, though her shoulders still carried tension. After a moment of quiet, the nurse spoke again. "You've been holding him for a long time. Your arms must be tired." "They're fine," the girl whispered. "Would you like a pillow to support him?" The girl hesitated, then nodded. "Maybe." The nurse gently placed a small pillow on the girl's lap and helped her settle the baby into a comfortable position. Now the girl didn't have to hold all the weight, and her arms slowly relaxed. The baby let out a tiny sigh and curled into the warmth. For a few minutes, no one spoke. The girl kept gently rocking the pillow, as if the baby might wake up if she stopped. The nurse watched her with quiet admiration. Most adults would have panicked in the same situation, but this girl had stepped up and done what needed to be done. After a while, the social worker said softly, "Sweetheart, you've been very brave, but you shouldn't have had to do all this alone." The girl blinked. Someone had to help him. "And you did," the social worker said with a warm smile. "But we want to help you too." The girl looked down again. "I'm fine." The social worker studied her carefully. "You know, sometimes when kids say they're fine, it's because they've learned no one listens when they say they're not." The girl froze slightly, as though the words had hit a place she tried to keep hidden. The baby stirred in her arms, stretching his small hand out from the blanket. The girl touched his fingers lightly, calming him. "He trusts you," the nurse said softly. The girl gave a tiny nod. "I told her I would take care of him." "And you did," the social worker said. "You kept your promise." A quiet knock at the door made the girl flinch slightly. A different nurse peeked inside and handed something to the first nurse. A small bottle of formula and a warm towel. The nurse turned to the girl. "He'll probably need to eat soon. Would you like us to feed him?" The girl hesitated. "Can I do it?" "Of course," the nurse said warmly. "I'll help you." The girl nodded slowly. The nurse showed her how to hold the bottle, how to tilt it so the baby wouldn't swallow too much air. The baby latched onto the bottle almost immediately, sucking softly, his small hands reaching out as if looking for something to hold. The girl watched him with awe in her eyes, her earlier fear melting into a softer emotion, one that looked a lot like hope. "He was really hungry," she whispered. "He trusts you," the nurse repeated. "You helped him when he needed someone." The girl didn't speak, but her expression softened completely. For the first time since she arrived, she looked like a child, not weighed down by fear or responsibility, but simply doing something kind. As the baby finished the bottle and drifted into sleep again, the girl leaned back slightly, exhaustion settling into her body. The social worker noticed the dark circles under her eyes, the way her shoulders slumped, and the way she kept checking the door as if still expecting something to happen. "Sweetheart," the social worker said gently, "do you want to rest? For a little while, we'll stay right here with him." The girl shook her head. "No, I can't." "Why not?" The girl's voice dropped to a whisper. "Because if I sleep, what if she comes back and thinks I didn't take care of him?" The nurse placed a gentle hand on her arm. "You've done more than enough." But the girl didn't seem to hear that part. She kept rocking the pillow, staring at the baby as though keeping him safe required her full focus. A few minutes passed before she finally spoke again, her voice small and unsure. "Do you think she'll be okay?" The nurse exchanged a soft glance with the social worker before answering. "We're going to do everything we can to help her." "And to help you." The girl didn't look convinced, but she didn't argue. Another quiet moment passed. Then the girl spoke again, almost too quietly to hear. "There's something else I didn't tell you." The nurse leaned in gently. "What is it?" The girl took a slow breath, her eyes fixed on the baby. "She said someone was looking for her," she whispered, "and that she didn't have much time." The room fell silent. The girl's voice trembled. "She said they would take him away if they found her. And she didn't want that. She said I looked like someone who would care." The nurse felt her heart tighten. The social worker spoke softly. "Did she tell you who was looking for her?" The girl shook her head. No, she just kept looking behind her. She was scared. The nurse drew a slow breath. And that's why she left him? The girl nodded. She thought he'd be safer with someone else. The room felt colder now, the shadows deeper. Social worker placed a steady hand on the girl's shoulder. Thank you for telling us. That helps us protect both of them. The girl looked up for the first time with eyes full of worry. Promise you won't let anyone hurt him, she whispered. Nurse spoke with certainty. No one will. We promise. The girl exhaled shakily, clutching the baby close. Outside the room, the D. Part 4 story content here, minus 1,700 words in simple English, engaging, human-centric, safe. And without restricted names. I will now write the full story here. The room felt warmer than before. Yet the girl still held the baby tightly, as if someone might walk in at any moment and take him away. She sat on the small bed in the observation room, her legs swinging gently back and forth because they could not reach the floor. The light from the window spread across her face, showing both fear and a strange mix of strength that did not match her age. The baby rested on her lap, wrapped in a blanket the nurse had given her, tiny hands peeking out as he moved in his sleep. She kept her eyes on him the whole time, as if making sure he was still breathing. Every few seconds she would brush her hand across his forehead, then look up at the nurse standing near the door. The nurse spoke with a calm voice, the same voice people used when they tried not to frighten a child. She explained that someone from the social care team wanted to ask a few more questions, just to understand what happened. The girl nodded, though she looked like she wanted to say no. It was clear she didn't want to let anyone too close to the baby. A gentle knock came on the door. A woman entered, carrying a clipboard, but wearing a soft expression. She walked slowly toward the girl and sat on a chair across from the bed. She didn't speak right away. Instead, she looked at the baby with warm eyes, then at the girl. Do you remember me? The woman asked softly. The girl nodded. She had met her earlier in the hallway when they first brought her inside. But this time, something felt different. The girl could sense the woman wanted answers, as she wasn't sure how much she should say. She looked down again and held the baby a little closer. The woman smiled gently. You're doing such a good job looking after him. I can see how much you care. Can you tell me a little more about how you found him? Her voice was steady and kind, giving the girl space to breathe. The girl took a long breath. At first she didn't speak. She stared at the wall as if she were replaying something in her mind, something she didn't want to remember but couldn't forget. After a moment, she whispered, I didn't just find him today. I saw him before. A few times. With his mother. This surprised the woman, though she kept her expression calm. She leaned forward a little. You've seen them before? Where? The girl looked around the room, as if making sure no one else was listening. Near the old bus shelter. The one close to the small grocery shop. The one with the broken sign. She paused. I walk past there every day on my way to school. The woman made a small note on her clipboard, but kept her focus on the girl. And the baby was always with the same woman? The girl nodded. She looked tired. Really tired. Like someone who hadn't slept in days. She held her breath, as if she wasn't sure she should say more. She was carrying him like she didn't want to put him down. But she also looked scared. Sometimes she cried. I saw her once sitting on the sidewalk with him. The room grew quiet. The woman didn't push. She let the silence stay until the girl felt ready to continue. After a few seconds, the girl whispered, I think something was wrong. I don't know what. But she didn't look like other moms. She looked like someone trying to hold everything together, even when everything was breaking. The woman nodded softly. You noticed a lot. That's very thoughtful of you. When did you see her last? The girl swallowed hard. This morning. Her voice trembled for the first time. The baby shifted in her lap, and she gently bounced him to keep him calm. She wasn't walking this time. She was standing at the bus stop, and she was crying. Not just normal crying. The girl shook her head slowly. She kept wiping her face like she didn't want anyone to see her. The woman's eyes softened even more. She didn't interrupt. She was holding the baby tight, the girl continued. But she looked around like she was scared of something. Or someone. I don't know. She saw me walking and she called me over. Not loud. Just quiet. Like she wasn't sure if she should call me at all. The girl lowered her eyes. When I walked closer, she looked at me the way someone looks when they're about to give away something they love. She said, the girl's voice broke slightly. She said, take care of him. She stopped speaking. Her small hands tightened around the baby. The woman kept her tone gentle. And then what happened? The girl stared at the floor as she answered. She put him down on the bench. She kissed his head. Then she walked away fast. I called after her. I told her the baby was crying, but she didn't turn back. She kept walking and wiped her face with both hands. The woman took a slow breath, letting the girl finish at her own pace. I didn't know what to do, the girl said. I carried him home first, but then I got scared because I knew he needed help. So I came here. She looked up finally, her eyes searching the woman's face. I just wanted him to be safe. The woman placed her clipboard on her lap and leaned closer. You did the right thing. You were brave. And you cared when a lot of people would have walked past. The girl looked unsure, as if she wasn't used to hearing someone speak kindly about her. I didn't want anything bad to happen to him, she said quietly. He's just a baby. The woman nodded. I understand. And we're going to help him. We're also going to help his mother if we can find her. But to do that, we need to know everything you saw. The girl shifted her weight. I told you everything. Then she hesitated. Well, almost everything. The woman waited, patient. The girl took another breath. The last time I saw the woman before today, she was sitting near a corner store. She had one hand on the baby, and her other hand was shaking. I think she was hungry. She kept trying to drink water from a small bottle, but the bottle was empty. She asked a man if he had spare change, but he yelled at her and told her to move. She looked down again. People were walking past like she wasn't even there. I wanted to help, but I didn't know how. Those words hung in the air, heavy and real. The woman wrote a small note, but kept her voice warm. It must have been hard to watch that. The girl nodded slowly. I wish I could have done something. She looked at the baby again. Maybe she thought I could. Outside the door, voices whispered, and the girl tensed. She pulled the baby closer, as if someone might take him away. The woman noticed and spoke gently. No one is taking him from you right now, she said. He's safe. You're safe. We're only trying to understand the situation so we can help both of them. The girl relaxed a little, though her arms still held tightly around the baby. A nurse stepped inside quietly and checked the baby's breathing, smiling softly at the girl. He's doing better now, the nurse said. He just needs rest and some fluids. You brought him here in time. The girl let out a breath she didn't realize she had been holding. Good, she whispered. The woman leaned forward, her voice soft. Can you tell me one more thing? When she handed you the baby today, did she say anything else? Anything at all? The girl closed her eyes for a moment. She said, someone kind will help. Then she opened her eyes and looked up at the woman. I didn't know she meant me. The woman smiled with kindness. She did, and you showed her she was right. The girl blinked quickly, as if holding back tears. It was clear she had carried more responsibility that morning than most adults ever would. For a moment, no one spoke. The baby breathed softly in the quiet room, his chest rising and falling with a gentle rhythm. Then the woman stood slowly. "Thank you for telling me everything. You helped us more than you know. We're going to start looking for his mother, and we'll make sure he gets everything he needs." The girl nodded, though part of her seemed scared of what would happen next. "Can I stay with him?" she asked in a small voice. The woman exchanged a quick glance with the nurse, then answered, "For now, yes. You've been with him this long. It's okay if you sit with him a little more." The girl sighed in relief as the woman stepped out to speak with the hospital team. The girl looked down at the baby again. He opened his eyes for a brief moment, blinking up at her. She smiled softly. "You're okay now," she whispered. "I'm right here." She didn't know what the next hours would bring. She didn't know what would happen when the baby's mother was found. She didn't know what questions would come next, or whether people would blame her or thank her. All she knew was that she had seen someone who needed help, and she had done what her heart told her was right. The baby moved his tiny hand, and she gently held it. The room felt a little warmer now, not because of the sunlight, but because of something else, something small and quiet. Like hope, and even though she was only 12, she felt a kind of strength inside her she had never felt before, as if she had taken her first step into a world much bigger than she had ever known. She didn't know it yet, but her story was just beginning. Part 5 story content will be written here minus 1,700 words. Simple English, human-centric, safe, no restricted names. The hallway outside the small room had grown busier, but inside, the girl sat quietly with the baby resting against her chest. His breathing had settled into a soft, steady rhythm. Every now and then he made a tiny sound, and each time she gently rubbed his back, the way she had seen adults do with younger children. Even though she had no real experience caring for a baby, something about it felt natural to her, maybe because she understood what it felt like to want comfort and not have it. Outside the room, voices rose and fell. People were walking fast. Doors opened and closed. The girl could tell the hospital staff were trying to move quickly now that they knew the mother might be wandering, somewhere alone and struggling. She had no idea how these searches worked, but she hoped they would find the woman soon. She didn't want the mother to be hurt or scared out there. A soft knock came on the door. A nurse stepped inside, her face kind as always. She smiled at the girl and walked toward the bed. "How are you doing?" she asked gently. The girl shrugged. "I'm okay." Then she looked down at the baby. "Is he really going to be fine?" "He's doing much better already," the nurse said. "You got him here in time. Babies can get weak very fast, but you helped him. He just needs rest and some fluids. The doctor will check on him again soon." The girl nodded, relieved. She felt her shoulders loosen slightly. "Can I hold him until then? He sleeps better like this." The nurse smiled. "Yes, you can keep holding him for now. He seems to feel safe with you." Her words made something warm rise in the girl's chest. Safe. It wasn't a word she heard often. Not for herself, and definitely not because of something she had done. Before the nurse left, she handed the girl a small cup of juice. "You need to keep your energy up too," she said softly. The girl accepted it and took a small sip. Her stomach growled a little. She hadn't eaten anything that day. She tried not to think about that too much. The door closed again, and she was left alone with the baby and her thoughts. For a moment, she touched the baby's tiny fingers. "You're stronger than you look," she whispered. Time passed slowly, but she didn't notice. She kept her full attention on the baby, sometimes singing a soft hum, sometimes rocking him very gently. The way she acted made her seem much older than 12. After some time, the door opened again. This time, the woman from before the one, with the clipboard, walked in. She wasn't smiling the way she usually did. She looked serious, focused. Not in a scary way, but in a way that told the girl things were happening outside the room. She pulled up a chair and sat next to the bed. "I need to talk to you about something important," she said softly. The girl looked up, holding the baby, little tighter without even realizing it. "What is it?" she asked. The woman took a breath. "The hospital called the local police station and also a few shelters nearby. They're trying to find the baby's mother. They've spoken to some people who think they might have seen her earlier today. We're following up on those leads now." The girl nodded slowly, her eyes serious. "Did something bad happen to her?" "We don't know yet," the woman answered. "But we're doing everything we can to find her. We want to make sure she's safe too." The girl looked down. "She didn't look okay when I saw her." "I know," the woman said gently. "That's why your information is so helpful. You paid attention when others didn't. That can make a big difference." The girl didn't reply. She just kept her hand on. "The baby's back." The woman waited a moment, then asked, "Do you remember anything else that might help us find her? Anything at all? Maybe something she wore today? Or something she said before she left?" The girl thought for a moment. She tried to picture the woman exactly as she had looked that morning. She remembered the crying, the shaking hands, the tired eyes. She remembered how fast she walked away, as if she couldn't afford to turn back. She was wearing a long coat. The girl finally said, "It looked too big for her, and she had a scarf wrapped around her head, but it kept slipping off." The woman nodded and wrote that down. "Anything else?" The girl looked at the wall, thinking. Then she whispered, "There was something on her wrist, a bracelet. It had little beads on it, blue ones. It looked really old." The woman's eyes brightened. "Slightly. That's helpful. Thank you." Then another question came. "Did she say anything else when she gave you the baby? Apart from asking you to take care of him?" The girl hesitated, thinking back. There had been something she hadn't mentioned yet, because she wasn't sure if it mattered. She said, "I don't want him to suffer like me." The words came out quietly, almost afraid. The woman exhaled in a slow, thoughtful way. "That tells us a lot about her state of mind. Thank you for telling me." The girl looked guilty. "I should have told you earlier. You told us now," the woman said warmly. "That's what matters. You're doing your best." Another voice called from the hallway. The woman stood. "I'll be back," she said softly. "Rest a little if you can." But rest wasn't something the girl knew how to do, not when she could still feel the weight of responsibility in her small arms. Minutes later, another person entered the room. A doctor this time, with a gentle expression and calm footsteps. She smiled at the girl. "Can I check on the little one?" she asked. The girl nodded and very slowly shifted the baby so the doctor could gently examine him. She watched every movement carefully, as if making sure nothing hurt him. After a few moments, the doctor smiled. "He's improving. He'll need a little more time, but he's responding well. You did an incredible thing bringing him here." The girl didn't know what to say. She looked down shyly. When the doctor left, the girl held the baby again. He blinked slowly and then drifted back to sleep. She ran her fingertips over his tiny cheek. She wondered where the mother was at that moment. Was she cold? Was she crying again? Was she hiding because she was scared of getting in trouble? Or was she looking for help but didn't know where to go? The girl felt a knot in her stomach. She didn't want the woman to be alone. She remembered the fear in the woman's eyes when she handed over the baby. It was the kind of fear that came from having no other choice. A long hour passed before the door opened again. The woman with the clipboard stood there, looking tired but hopeful. "We might have found her," she said. The girl's heart skipped. "Is she okay?" "She's alive," the woman said softly. "She was found near a bus station a few miles from here. She was sitting on the ground, crying, holding on to that bracelet you mentioned." The girl held the baby closer. "Is she coming here?" "Yes," the woman said. "She's being brought in now. She's weak and dehydrated, but she's stable." She kept asking about the baby. She didn't know if he was safe. The girl looked down at the baby and then at the woman. "Will she get him back?" The woman took a slow breath. "We have to make sure both of them are safe first. We aren't here to punish her. We're here to understand, to help, to figure out the best next step." The girl nodded, though she didn't fully understand how these things worked. A few minutes later, the woman returned again. "She wants to see you," she said softly. The girl froze. "Me?" "Yes," the woman replied. "She remembers your face. She remembers handing you the baby. She wants to talk to you before anything else." The girl swallowed hard. She didn't know what to expect. She didn't know if the woman would be angry or grateful or scared. The baby stirred, so she gently rocked him again. "Can I bring him?" She whispered. "Not yet," the woman said kindly. "The doctors want to check her first, but you can see her. You can talk to her." The girl nodded slowly. She stood up, still holding the baby. The nurse came forward and carefully took him from her arms. "He'll be right here when you come back," the nurse said gently. The girl hesitated, then let go. Her arms suddenly felt empty. She followed the woman through the hallway. Her footsteps were small and slow, but her heart felt loud. She didn't know what waited behind the next door, but she knew she had to walk through it. When they reached the room, the woman gently pushed the door open. Inside, someone lay on a hospital bed, covered with a blanket, breathing slowly. The girl stepped forward. She had never seen someone look so fragile in her life. This was the beginning of everything. That would change next. When the morning sun rose the next day, the hospital felt strangely calm, as if it already knew something important was going to happen. The girl woke up before most people. She sat on the edge of her bed for a long moment, holding the small blanket she had used to wrap the baby. Her eyes were tired, but there was also a quiet strength in them. She had not slept much, yet she looked ready to face whatever was ahead. Down the hallway, the older nurse who had stayed with her the night before walked slowly toward her room, carrying a warm drink in a paper cup. She pushed the door open with her shoulder and stepped inside. The girl lifted her head and gave a small smile, the kind that showed she appreciated the kindness, even if she could not find the words. The nurse sat beside her and asked softly if she was ready. The girl nodded. She knew this day was important. People were waiting for answers. Some had already formed opinions about what happened, but she understood that the truth still needed to be shared clearly, without fear. A little while later, the doctor entered. He had a calm voice and warm eyes, and although he had many responsibilities, he never rushed when he was with her. He told her that the social worker would be there soon, and they would discuss what would happen next. The girl listened carefully, her hands folded on her lap. She was not scared anymore. She had already made the hardest decisions. Everything now was about making sure the baby would be safe, even if that meant telling the same story again and again so adults could understand. When the social worker finally arrived, she pulled up a chair and sat facing the girl. She spoke gently, explaining the steps they needed to take. She asked the girl to walk through everything one more time, from the moment she found the baby to the moment she walked into the hospital. The girl repeated her story slowly. She talked about hearing a soft cry near the old path behind her apartment building. She talked about finding the tiny bundle on the ground, wrapped in a light cloth, cold and shaking. She explained how she looked around, thinking someone would run out from behind a tree or a doorway and claim the baby. But no one did. She explained how she tried knocking on doors in the building nearby, but no one knew anything. One woman even told her not to get involved, saying problems like this were better left alone. But the girl could not leave the baby. She remembered how she tucked the child against her chest and ran straight to the hospital. She did not think about anything else, only that the baby needed help. The social worker nodded gently through the entire story. She asked a few questions, but none were meant to challenge the girl. They were simply needed for the report. When they were done, she reached across and touched the girl's hand carefully, without rushing her. She told her she had done the right thing. She had acted with courage, even though she was just 12 and had no reason to carry such responsibility on her own. A few hours later, 2 officers arrived to follow up on the case. They were not there to intimidate her. They were simply collecting information about the abandoned baby. They asked if she felt unsafe at home, if she knew anyone who might be connected to the baby, and if she had seen anything suspicious in the days before. The girl answered every question honestly. She did not hide anything. It was clear to the officers that she was not involved in anything wrong. In fact, she had done more than many adults would have done in her place. Later, when the officers left, the girl leaned back in the chair and looked out the window. The sky was bright and blue, and for the first time in days, she felt a little lighter. She reached for the warm drink the nurse had left earlier and took a slow sip. Around noon, the doctor returned with an update. The baby was healthy now, warm, safe, responding well to care. The girl's shoulders relaxed when she heard that. She did not realize she had been holding her breath. The doctor said something else too, something that surprised her. He said the baby had been given a temporary name until officials could learn more. He also said the girl would be allowed to see the baby again before she left. Her eyes widened. She had not expected that. She had assumed the baby had already been taken somewhere far away. When she walked into the nursery room with the nurse, her steps were slow and careful. She looked around, unsure if she even had the right to be there. But the nurse guided her gently toward the crib. The baby was sleeping, tiny hands curled near its face. The girl felt an ache she could not explain, something soft and deep. She reached out, but stopped before touching. The nurse nodded, giving her silent permission. The girl placed one finger lightly on the baby's tiny hand, and the baby's fingers curled around hers. Her throat tightened. She whispered something the nurse could barely hear. It was a simple promise that she would always remember this little life she had helped save. Not long after, the social worker returned. It was time to discuss what would happen now. The girl knew she could not take the baby home. She was too young, and she did not have the stability needed. But she still wanted to know what the next steps were. The social worker explained that the baby would be placed in emergency care while the authorities looked for the parents or a safe long-term home. She told the girl that her actions had given the baby a start that might have been lost otherwise. The girl listened quietly, absorbing each word. Later in the afternoon, the girl's aunt arrived. She had been working long hours and had not realized how serious everything was until the hospital contacted her. When she walked in and saw her niece, she rushed over and held her tight. The girl closed her eyes, letting herself feel the warmth and safety she often missed at home. Her aunt asked question after question. Why she had gone alone, why she did not call her earlier, why she carried the baby by herself. But each question came from worry, not anger. The girl explained everything slowly, and by the end, her aunt hugged her again, telling her she had done something many adults would not have been brave enough to do. As evening approached, The hospital prepared her discharge papers. The doctor came by one more time, thanking her for what she had done. The nurses waved from the hallway as she walked out with her aunt. Some of them smiled warmly, proud of her. Outside, the air felt cool against her face. She looked back at the hospital doors as they closed behind her. Something inside her felt changed. She had not planned any of this. She had not tried to be a hero. She simply could not walk away from a child who needed help. And now, even though she was only 12, she understood something many people learn much later in life, that a single act of kindness can change someone's future. On the ride home, her aunt kept one arm around her shoulders. The girl leaned against her, tired but peaceful. She knew she had done the right thing. She also knew the baby was safe, because she had not hesitated when she heard that tiny cry. And though she would go back to school, back to chores, back to studying, and living like any other 12-year-old, she also knew she would never forget the small life she carried into the hospital that day. The memory would stay with her, not as a burden, but as a reminder of the power of doing what is right, even when it is hard. When they finally reached home, her aunt made dinner and kept fussing over her, asking if she wanted extra food or a blanket or anything at all. The girl smiled and shook her head each time, grateful but exhausted. She sat quietly, staring at the soft light in the kitchen. She realized something important. She had discovered a strength inside herself she did not know she had. She was still young, still learning, still finding her place in the world. But she had already made a difference in someone's life, and that meant something. That night, as she lay on her bed, she thought about the baby one more time. She hoped the little one would grow up safe, loved, and wanted. She whispered a quiet wish into the darkness before closing her eyes. It was a simple wish, but it came from the deepest part of her heart.